This video is about the texture coordinate node in Unreal Engine materials. I'm gonna explain what it is, what it's used for, and how we can use it. So let's do it. I've created a master material with all the functions necessary for your projects. You can download it for free on my website. Link in the description below. Right-click in the material graph and search for texture coordinate. We can also search for text chord. Or left-click while holding U on the keyboard to add it. Delete these two. It has one output and no inputs. Here in the Details tab, we have access to these settings. I'll go over them one by one later in the video. Why do we use this node? It allows the material to operate on the UVs of a mesh. I explained what UVs are and how we can affect them in this video. So how does it do that? It outputs UV texture coordinates in the form of a 2-channel vector. Let's run it through a mask node to see what that means. Watch this video if you're not familiar with the mask node. Enable only the R channel from here and connect it to the base color. Save the material and assign it to this plane. We can see that it is a black to white or 0 to 1 gradient. Black is 0, white is 1, and every shade in between is a decimal from 0 to 1. It is a gradient in the U direction or X axis. Keep in mind that UV is the same as XY but in the texture space. Basically, XYZ in 3D space is the same as RGB in color space, and they're the same as UVW in texture space. That's why when I enable the R channel, we can see the gradient in the U or X direction. If I enable only the G channel here, we'll get the black to white gradient in the V direction or Y axis. So this is the 2-channel vector it outputs. If I enable the B channel or the alpha channel, it gives an error saying there are not enough components because it doesn't have those channels. So how can we use it? Let's add this UV checker texture to demonstrate that. You can download this texture for free on my website. While there, you have access to all these other free Unreal Engine assets too, and you can use the donate button on the top to help me continue making them. Texture coordinate should connect to the UV's input here. Connect it to the base color and delete this one. Apply and save. I'll also add a cylinder and a cube. Assign the material to these two as well. The default settings of the texture coordinate node don't make any difference. It's the same as the default coordinate system that the texture is set up for. If I disconnect it and apply, you can see that nothing changes. So connect it again. When we connect it, we'll have the ability to override the default coordinate system. Apply and save. Now let's go over these settings. First one is coordinate index. We also have it here on the node. It gives us access to the mesh's different UV channels. We can have different UV sets in different channels. For example, let's open the cylinder static mesh. Up here on the toolbar, we have a UV drop down. Click on it. By default, it is set to none. This static mesh has two UV channels. This is UV channel 0 and this is UV channel 1. They're different. By default, channel 0 is used to overlay the texture on the mesh, and channel 1 is used for light maps. Let's check the cube's UV channels too. We can remove or add more UV channels if we want to, but these two are enough most of the time. By default, coordinate index is set to 0, and you should leave it at 0 unless you know what you're doing. It is set to 0, so it uses the UV channel 0 to overlay the 2D texture on the 3D mesh. However, we can change it. Let's set it to 1 and apply it to see what I mean. You can see the change on the cube and the cylinder. It is because now the material is using UV channel 1 to overlay the texture on the mesh. On the plane, it doesn't change. That's because if I open its mesh, we can see that both UV channels are the same. Let's set it back to 0 and apply. Next, we have U tiling and V tiling. They control how much the texture tiles. It scales the UVs by the amount we specify here. For example, when I set U tiling to 2, it scales the U component of the UVs by 2. That's why the texture will tile 2 times. Let's see it in Unreal. Change the U tiling value and apply. As you can see, now it tiles 2 times in the U direction. The same is true for V tiling. Before getting to that, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also join our community on Telegram, Discord and Facebook. The links are in the description below. When I set V tiling to 2, it scales the V component of the UVs by 2. And here's what it looks like in Unreal. This is how it looks if I set them to 0.5. Basically, we can change the apparent size of the texture on the mesh. The other 2 options are OnMirror U and OnMirror V. It says that you should use these if the texture is mirrored and you want to undo the mirroring. But this is what happens when I enable them. When I set the tiling to 2 and enable OnMirror on the same axis, they cancel each other out. Personally, I've never used them, and by default you're gonna want to keep them unchecked. I use this node in these tutorials to rotate, offset, and scale the textures. And watch this video for more Unreal stuff. So thank you so much for watching. Like this video, subscribe, and join our communities on Telegram, Discord, and Facebook. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. So, see you in the next one.